talk today, which is about how COVID-19, from the early days of the outbreak in Southeast Asia, it spread across the globe and then onto the second or even the third wave that we're in today, has triggered the TomTom people department to accelerate the Agile journey. The Agile journey we've been on for quite some years. The pandemic has had many far-reaching and negative consequences for all of us, for TomTom also, for our employees and their families. And it taught us invaluable lessons about what truly matters in life: health, safety, well-being. And when we prioritize on those, we must relentlessly prioritize on those. But before I get into that, let me introduce myself. My name is Arne-Christian. I'm CHRO at TomTom. Been with the company for 12 years. As you can see, I live a little bit out in the country. So if you hear or see any sheep or dogs, that explains it. When I joined TomTom in 2008, the company was at the height of their fame in consumer electronics. We created the world's first sat-nav or navigation device, and we sold about 100 million of those. Today, TomTom is one of the leading location technology specialists. We create highly accurate maps, navigation software, live traffic services. And with all that technology, our people are committed to creating or contributing at least to a safer, cleaner, congestion-free world. TomTom is still a founder-led company for more than 30 years now. We're headquartered in Amsterdam. Also, we're a Dutch company, but we're truly global. We have over 80 nationalities, and all our people work with hundreds of millions of customers, drivers, enterprises, business, government, for this congestion-free world. And this is the team that makes it all happen, the people team. And almost everyone fits on this picture. Unfortunately, not everyone. It's about 100 people. We have, of course, recruiters, employer brand, internal comms, learning and development, rewards, tax, mobility, you name it, we have it. Also, more not so very traditional roles such as people analytics, but also Scrum Masters, product owners, Agile coaches. And I'll talk more about that. This team has been on the Agile journey for quite some time, and I thought it'd be nice to take you on that journey. A bit of a disclaimer, this is a good team. Even before that journey, mind you, this is one of the world's best people teams you'll ever come across. But it's also true that as TomTom was transitioning from consumer electronics to B2B and B2B2C online technology, we found ourselves competing in a different league, and we were competing with high-tech companies, and the expectations for talent and for skills were much higher than they've ever been before. Also, the expectations of candidates and our employees was very different when it came to our employee journey, the employee experience, but also when it came to purpose and deep engagement with the company. So we knew we needed to aim higher and create products and create an employee experience that was quicker to market, that was more relevant, and ultimately helped us achieve our ambition quicker. So we started this Agile journey. We've been pretty agile in our Agile journey, meaning that we tried many things. And in software development, many of the things that we tried probably even wouldn't qualify as Agile. But for us, actually, they're all part of a process where we started exploring different ways of approaching our people processes and the way we work together and the way we get a product to market, if you will. So we tried many things: Kanban and Scrum teams and sprints and retrospectives and communities of practice and customer involvement. And we've had full design thinking days, double diamonds, you name it, we tried. And many of those things actually we still do today, and we learn from many of those. We also got into some trouble here and there, or quite frankly, the ambition was often so high that we were shooting for the stars all at the same time. We're shooting for all the same stars at the same time. So we would look at the entire employee journey, look at all the different touch points, and all those different touch points, we would try to come up with fantastic solutions for those. And that got us into some big, big trouble. So it's good to look back and to see what went really well. Well, one of the first things that we learned is that end-to-end responsibility in a team, to give a team some guidance, but ultimately, the skills, and make sure that you have different skills in a team so they could address a problem or a challenge independently with end-to-end responsibility that worked really well and still works today. Also, what we learned to do is not to boil the ocean and try to chop up problems into much smaller iterations, so we could take a sprint, do a couple of weeks, then reflect, then move on, rather than take a very waterfall approach and see you at the end kind of approach, which really didn't work for us. Data. We've become more data mature, and I would say 5 or 6 years ago, we really had to transition from using data as in reporting standard HR KPIs, and we were just lucky we would have the technology and the data to report properly to the management board. Then we started to learn how to use data to validate the solutions that we're trying to build, and by now we're starting to use data to identify what problems we're going to solve. So I think over the years, over time, we've really matured when it comes to our use of data. And then also the team has been fantastic, and the team's been so eager to learn, and learning agility has been fantastic. And as a team, we've learned, and I think from everything that we've tried over the years, we all picked up things, and we continue to develop ourselves moving on. Also, of course, there are things that could have gone better. And I think first and foremost, we had a tendency to fall in love with the solutions we were going for. And I'll give you an example of that. Say in our Glint engagement survey, we would find the data that developers in our company were not very happy, or they did not see the value of the feedback they were getting from their managers. We would take that data point and we would quite creatively come up with all sorts of solutions. Oh, we're going to change the feedback loops. We're going to introduce regular check-ins. We're going to change performance management, whatever it would be. But we would then get too hung up on those solutions without truly identifying the problem and without falling in love with the problem. Also, part of that problem was that we would involve our customers only fairly late in the process. So by the time we had come up with this fantastic new feedback mechanism, we would start testing this with our customers at about 75% completion, rather than trying to truly understand that problem with our customers, co-create with the customers, blend in a team with our customers where we create a product or a solution together. Part of that also because our planning really suffered, and I must say that I had quite a lot to do with that, because I realized, oh, we're going to do this, that, and the other. I was super enthusiastic. At the same time, we're trying to do many, many things at the same time, and we found it difficult to manage the cadence of business as usual and product development. And quite often when there was additional pressure on our business as usual, say we would need to recruit faster, then anything that was happening in product development would suffer from that. And part of the problem there, of course, was that we did not prioritize right. We were aiming high, but we're trying to do too many things at the same time, and we did not truly say what it was that we're not going to do. Now, part of prioritization, of course, is that not only do you determine what it is that you're going to do and where you're going to act, put your focus on, it's also deciding what it is that you're not going to do. So this is where we were. We've been looking back, and then we said, actually, we learned many great things, but also we still get ourselves into some kind of trouble, and we need a reset. And one of the most important thing actually that we identified what we needed to fix is we needed to make sure that all of us work on what matters most. And to determine what matters most, actually we had come up with a model, or it's not a model per se, it's really a mapping of everything that we've been doing so far and everything that we see as part of Agile HR. And, don't look at all those different boxes. You won't be able to read it anyway. I cannot without my glasses. But it's really consists of 3 parts. And what you see at the bottom, and the 3 part, is anything around product development. So this is where we take our sprints and we have the iterations, where we work with our customer, co-create, when we do the retrospectives and we ask for the feedback and we have the next iteration. So this is the development piece. The second part, if you zoom in on that, is our Kanban board. And this is where we decide what projects are we going to take on, what's going to be in the icebox, what's going to be on our backlog, and what is ultimately making it production. This is also where we manage our business as usual. So ultimately, this is where we allocate resources and where we decide which team is going to work on what deliverable. All of our efforts, quite frankly, in the first couple of years were on those two. But in reality, it should have started with number one. And number one, sorry, I'm clicking the wrong way. Number one really is about determining value. What matters most? And so there's little boxes here, and I'll gladly share this slide deck with you after the event. But all those boxes here, they represent stakeholders. So our management board and our customers, so candidates and our employees and anybody who consider our customer. And we try to determine, and we try to find a methodology. We need to find a methodology that helps us establish what brings most value to the company. So this is where we were, and this is the step that we're about to take. And then COVID-19 happened. But the best thing we could say about COVID-19 happening is that at least our priorities were very straight. Reality shifted, it changed in a nanosecond, it felt. And it was a matter of weeks, of course, the entire world changed. And priorities all of a sudden became very, very clear. And also what was very clear is that our entire Agile journey at that point, and that we were just about ready to get going with step one, was really not our priority. Now, what we needed to do when COVID-19 started to happen, we needed to stop many things. And we needed to make sure that we could put all of our efforts on dealing with this crisis and with the immediate situation. And I think one of the good things that we did immediately is we stopped, or at least paused, all of our business as usual activity. And so we paused recruitment, just wanting to make sure that the candidates were in the pipeline and the candidates that we're still talking to, or were maybe already moving country, that they were looked after. But we paused vacancies, we reopened them a couple of weeks later, but we needed to first focus on what mattered most. So stop all that, stop everything you're doing, let's focus on this, let's do it. The other thing we stopped is stop looking at the news feed. I don't know about your companies, but at TomTom, in the first week or so, we were tempted to, first of all, we had a 24/7 WhatsApp group going with, oh, Germany has fallen, or the schools are closed in the US, and there are so many cases in the Netherlands, and this is what the current situation in China is. We needed to stop doing that, because actually what we learned is that distracted us from dealing with the situation. We were just being reactive. So what we did is we decided quite quickly, early in the process, to shut down all of our offices and to ask all of our employees to stay home, stay safe, and then we'll worry about work later. So we could finally, so when we stopped those, when we managed our distractions, we could focus on what mattered most. And what that was, of course, it was plain and simple, health and safety. So our first thing to do is reassure ourselves and do everything that we could to make sure our employees were safe and well. When we had tackled that, and when that box was ticked, then we could start worrying about effective communication. Of course, with 5,000 people being in 5,000 different places, we needed to start using new channels. We need to find different feedback loops and make sure that we have two-way communication going in different ways than we had before. Next step was make sure that everybody was equipped and that we would actually have an online setup. We were not the only company that needed 600 laptops in 5 days back in March. And also many of our employees did not have proper internet connectivity at home, right? So we needed to worry about that, because of course also we need to make sure that everybody gets back into productivity. And then also we could worry about leadership visibility and capabilities. And the leadership team at TomTom really needed to step up, or at least also needed to act differently than we had before. And we needed to not only lead the company through this crisis, but also we needed to be visible for our employees much more than ever before, and shows them that we were serious about our priorities, and about this list of priorities was as clear as that. So then if I take you back to that model I was just showing you, and then I just told you that we paused many of the things that were going on in numbers 2 and 3. What happened actually, because those priorities were so clear and what mattered most was so very clear, number 1 was done, because we had determined value. We needed to, it was non-negotiable. We needed to act. We needed to make sure our employees were safe, and so on and so forth. So as those priorities were really clear, what we saw happening when dealing with that, actually numbers 2 and 3 came into play very organically, because agile teams started to form, and those were not just HR teams, no, those were truly agile teams with facility and security and our business leaders, our site owners, and many different people just got together, and everybody intuitively maybe knew what to do, but also planning for it and determining through, say, our Kanban board, what we're going to do next week, what we're going to do next month, maybe our icebox, and what needed to happen today, what was in production today, small iterations, all very important. Another important element is that our customer needed to help us create the solutions. So we needed to fall in love with the problem. We needed to seek input from our customers, because we didn't have the solutions. We had never managed with a crisis this skill before. So we needed to understand from our employees what's on your mind. So we started surveying extensively and get that customer feedback and act immediately based on that feedback. So by the time we had all of that managed and better under control, only then could we start focusing on what mattered next. And of course, what mattered next was an online first experience. And we had been forced to move to an online first world, but we also needed to take steps, because then immediately, if everything's going to be online, you need to learn how to operate in that. You need to learn how to onboard people in online only or online first. Also, of course, we've taken many lessons, and our employees, many of them actually quite enjoy working from home or that work location flexibility. So we're preparing for a world beyond COVID-19, where we're going to change the way we work at TomTom with much greater flexibility. From our lessons, but prioritization and determining what matters most, we've started to adopt the use of objectives and key results in HR, or OKRs. And this is a methodology that many tech companies use and that TomTom uses also, but we also in HR start now using OKRs to cover our step number 1, to identify what it is that we're going to work on and what value it's going to bring. And now, of course, when things have settled down a little bit, this is only now we start working on continuous improvements for anything that we've been rolling out throughout the year. So looking back, COVID-19 really triggered us to do a couple of things. First and foremost, identify, understand our value. Focus on delivering against that value, and with focus also determining what it is that we're not going to do. And finally, as we didn't have the solution, we needed to fall in love with the problems and work with our customers to make that happen, and manage our distractions so we could stay on course. Whenever I learn anything, I try to remember 3 things from anything I watch or read, or any process that I go through myself. And I try to remember 3. For me, ultimately, 3 biggest lessons that I'm always going to take in my further professional career. Value, determine the value, because when you do, and when you get people behind that value, it's going to be so much easier. Manage your priorities, and with managing your priorities, also manage everything that you're not going to do. Manage your distractions just as much. And then finally, my greatest lesson, and of course we knew it, but I think it's now truly come to life. There's not a product that's going to sell without a customer. So if your customer has not been fully involved in creating the product, and if your product doesn't actually do what your customer hopes it's going to do, there's no point. Thank you so much for your attention today. I'm going to be available later for live Q&A. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you, ArneChristian. Great to see what the impact of COVID-19 was on TomTom. Just like one question that crosses my mind all the time is that just imagine, and I know it's not possible, but imagine there was no crisis. In what situation, in what shape would TomTom be now? What would be different with or without a crisis?
I think that's a very good question. We'll never know, will we? It's a good question, Wouter, because of course, I can talk about TomTom and like for many companies, the crisis has been hard for TomTom also. So we've seen that in our revenues. We've seen that people drive a lot less. So obviously that's going to impact us. But I think as a company we have a healthy plan moving forward, and I'm not duly worried there. When it comes to HR and our Agile Journey, I think for us it really triggered taking immediate action, and through that the Agile process started to develop. Where we were just prior to Corona was exactly there, that we had identified the need to establish our value and truly establish what it is that we should be doing more of, and what we should focus and learn how to prioritize and not try to boil the ocean, try to do too many things at the same time. So I think 8 months down the line, I think we would have been on that journey, but I don't think we would have reached this point yet.
Okay, thank you, Dana. That's clear, very honest. Thank you. In the meantime, I've noticed some questions that came through. The first one is from Catalina. Thank you, Catalina, for this. She's asking, how was the situation of positive cases in your organization? What did you face, and what type of crisis management did you take?
Well, quite quickly in the process, and I think we established a crisis team. That not only was one of the complexities with TomTom. We're not a huge company, but we have 5,000 people, and of course, those 5,000 people are now all at home. But already in 40 offices or so, so it's quite spread across the globe, from anywhere in New Zealand to San Jose, California. And so we have many smaller offices. So we work with our site leaders, where we have somebody appointed in the local site who manages the local situation, helps employees be successful. We had a team focusing on crisis. We unfortunately, there's no escaping it. We've had quite a few cases. I think each case is one too many. It's limited. Fortunately, the vast majority has recovered and had mild symptoms only. But of course, what we needed to do is, establish also, who they've been in contact with, have they been, the same as everybody else has been doing. And I think it's also one of the reasons why very early in the process we said, let's everybody go home and let's try to be safe there. Because we did not want to risk or jeopardize or pull people back into the office where we really feel it wasn't ready. And there's also, as a company, we said, until the end of the year, but I don't know how that's going to end. We don't expect